What's going on, guys? It's Coach Gaglione here. This is another edition of the Powerlifting for People podcast. I'm your host. We got another interview today with Frank from Reps from Responders. How you doing today?
John, I'm doing well. Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me on. It's an honor.
I don't know if you know this or not, but we do have something in common that we're both on Mark Bell's podcast. I don't know if you. So I was
No,
going
I
through
didn't.
some of your stuff.
I did not know
So,
that. That's
so that
awesome.
was
Wow.
cool. So I was like kind of
Yeah.
funny because sometimes you kind of hear the voice, whatever, and I was like, oh man. So anyway, as I was starting to kind of piece together after we met at the Varsity House. We had Josh Bryan, Ed Cohen, which was fantastic. But before we kind of get into the event, just want to hear a little about like your backstory, who you are, what you got going on, and then we can maybe kind of talk about like your kind of journey with your own fitness and how that's going.
Yeah, sure. No, absolutely. So my name is Frank Vos. I've been a law enforcement officer for almost 8.5 years in January. Currently with the NYPD. The NYPD did not send me here. I am speaking on behalf of the Reps for Responders. So I got into law enforcement at the age of 23 years old, 2015. Before that, and I mentioned you at the seminar, I went to SUNY Cortland for 2 years, played football up there for a year. And then during spring ball, so I went to a community college first, and I felt like I was missing something part of me, and I couldn't like pinpoint it. And it was football. And I was like, you know what? I haven't played in a year and a half, right? I played through all 4 years of high school. I'm going to work my butt off and see if I can walk on to the SUNY Cortland football team. And that's exactly what I did. I remember the training regimen. I remember the diet I ate, John. But I figured I followed the old school BFS program, bigger, faster, stronger. And it was Mondays was bench, box squat and towel bench. Wednesday was power cleans and hex bar deadlift, and Friday was regular bench, regular squat, and the rep scheme was 3x3. Then it was like a 10-8-6. Then it was like a 5-4-3-2-1 and a 5x5, something along those lines. But at every single last set, you had to do like the 3+ on your 5x5, the last of 5+. And then when you come around the next month, you try to beat that by 5 pounds, 2.5 pounds, whatever it was. So a lot of good results from that. Tuesdays and Thursdays was like accessory speed and agility day. So I just remember that program to a T, and it's one of my favorite programs I've ever followed. After football, I was already on the list to get in, but I put into the academy, but I put it in the back burner because I wanted to get my degree. And it was spring ball. So I played my junior year, and then spring ball, I saw like two guys right in front of me, like tear their ACL, like really bad injuries. And I was like, dang, if this happens to me, like I'll never be a cop, and I'm just going to work my butt off to maybe play special teams. So I walked away from that, and I got into powerlifting, competed at 181, really, really dove into that. Was doing USAPA, WABDL, some random meets and things like that. So really took off into that. And then I joined the academy in 2023. So I was there for 2 years. If you count the academy, that's 6 months, 2.5 years. So I was still training very hard, but my life then really consisted, John, of just lifting, mainly powerlifting, being a cop, and hanging out with my friends. Okay, so I got on at 23. At 25, I had an opportunity to move to Rockland County. That's where I'm from, police department. And I did. And that's where my whole entire world turned upside down. Kind of, if there's any like Stranger Things fans in here, kind of got stuck in the upside down.
Yeah.
And put a lot of pressure on myself, John. And I remember, I don't use this word, but I remember my first panic attack, but it's really, flight, fight, or freeze syndrome. And they actually added something in that I like because I've worked with people and it happened to me. So fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And fawning is doing super nice things constantly over and over again for people, buying gifts, just being super nice. Buying gifts is a big red flag for fawning, or constantly reaching out. Oh, can I pick you up this? Can I do this? And it's that. Looking more into that was me to a T of trying to hide guilt and shame, trying to prove that you're super nice, and you didn't want anyone to think that you're bad person, right? So I really like to add that in there because we all hear fight, flight, or freeze, right? It's part of our human DNA. But when I really started to learn about the word fawning and fawn, I was like, wow, this makes a lot of sense. So I just couldn't get out of my own head. Couldn't get out of my own head. And I was like, do I want to do solo patrol for 20 years in my hometown, knowing everybody? And I took that to heart. And I didn't really tell anybody about it. So I would sit in the car, and then I felt like I made a bad decision. But who leaves the city to go to? No, it's like getting into Suffolk or Nassau, right? You made it. You got the Willy Wonka golden ticket, and closer to home, it's safer, it's more money. It's like a no-brainer, right? And it really started to eat me from the inside. So as time progressed, it was like January when I started of 2018. A few months in, man, I was like a solid, I would say solid, but I was 185 pounds. And I went to 165 in about 3 months, man. I stopped lifting. I stopped eating. I would have a green tea from Dunkin' Donuts and a shake every single day. Um, that was a lot of the symptoms from the anxiety. And back then, 25, I'm like, how can depression be real? How can people be depressed? Life is so good. From football, making it to be a cop, Eagle Scout, all these achievements. I'm like, life is good, right? But that's when I realized it doesn't matter if you could deadlift triple body weight. It doesn't matter, it in the real world and everyday things, when you start, your ego starts to take over, and you've been a lifter for a long time and you've trained people. And when people get so obsessed, let's say, with numbers, and if they don't hit this number, it ruin you, it could break you down. It doesn't matter how tough you are on the outside. Is what's really matters what is happening in here, and how you look at yourself every day and how you talk to yourself every day. And I was really, really talking bad to myself, really talking down. So the song, should I stay or should I go? And then, right, that was my theme song. And I didn't know if I should leave and go back where these issues never came out. And I was happy, in quotes, content, or do I stay? So I ended up staying a little longer, because if you leave NYPD, you have up to a year to come back. So if you go to a different department, if you quit, resign, if you retire, and some guys retire and they're like 6 months in, like, man, I'm bored with my life, and come back, you have up to a year to come back. So people started to notice, asked if I was okay. And I started my drinking was on my off days. So I would drink on my off days with my friends, or cop friends, or just friends in general. And I was a blackout drinker. So I would have one, and once one, it was 20. So it was either zero or all in. And then 2 weeks would go by, and I'd be like, damn, feel like crap, guilt and shame. Before I knew what the guilt and shame was, and talk about that later. I'll take 2 weeks off, and then I'll be like, all right, I'm feeling better now. If I have a powerlifting meet in a month, right before I went through this, I would take a month off. And then after that, it was all back to normal drinking. So then I realized I started drinking on my own, isolation. Moved into an apartment with my girlfriend, thinking that was going to fix everything. Oh, it'll make her happy. It'll be better. John, I didn't do shit, man. I laid on the couch. I didn't even get Wi-Fi cable. She was literally doing everything. I just lay on the couch, lay in bed, go to work, go out sick a lot. It was really dark. I remember one day I woke up, maybe it was like the spring of 2018 or the summer, and everything was black and white. And I just felt like my nervous system shut off. And I'm like, damn, this is what depression is. Like, my body couldn't take it anymore, of being in that hyper vigilant, that the fight or flight state, constant. Then started taking over decisions on my everyday life. What am I going to eat? Like showering like 2-3 times a day to try to stay busy, get out of my own head, like just a lot of repetitive behaviors. Having like a hard time picking out clothes, things like that. So it really started to take over then my everyday life. Then I saw a therapist, which I had to hush hush about, right? Because if you're a cop, and that was the biggest thing, I can't tell anybody what I'm going through, especially at a new department. If I do, I'll get my gun and shield taken away, and I'll never be a cop again, and my life is over. That was the thought process. So time went on, and I did it for about 10 months. And then I put the paperwork to go back. And I went back. I made a decision, but, and everyone was like, don't go back. You'll ruin your life. Just hang on. But people didn't know that I was going back not only to try to save my career, but to save my actual life, because that's how dark it was. So my girlfriend ended up leaving the relationship because she was getting very sick. She couldn't handle it anymore. And at the time, I was like, you got to be kidding me, you know? It was the best move she ever did. So, started to slowly see everything I started to touch like melted. So I went back to the city in November of 2018. So we're talking like 5 years ago now, right? And time is flying, man. Wow. And I went back and everyone was like, what happened? I just said it wasn't for me, and I was very talkative, very happy-go-lucky, and I was just stonewall. I felt like a zombie, man. I felt soulless. I was putting in all these different SSRIs in a short period amount of time, trying to find the right ones. And I'll mention it because there might be some listeners that are on it right now, or maybe they have taken it and it worked for them, it didn't work for them. The first two medications I was on was Prozac and Seroquel, and that's the first time I ever had suicidal ideations in my life. And I was like, why would I take this if I can just drink and not feel and have the same results? So, and this is what you don't do, right? Because SSRIs, very powerful medication. It takes time to kick in. I would cut cold turkey. I would go back to drinking. Then I got put on Zoloft, and then I taken off that and got put on Wellbutrin. And then I remember the person who I was seeing, the provider, ended up taking something out of the draw. I'm like, try this. This is new. And like Rexulti. So like in the span of 3 months, I was on these 5 different medications. I was just like soulless. That's how I felt. And I just felt like a lab rat. I felt like all these different types of medication now that are in my body, and also have to take complete ownership because I was drinking and cutting it off, drinking and drinking on it. It was a disaster. I call when you're drinking on depression and anxiety or drugging, it's like giving that depression and anxiety steroids. It's just making it stronger and stronger inside of you. It wants you to do that, and say, Frank, you feel so lonely, you deserve this drink, blah, 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 all these type of self-talk. So then time went on, and I maybe lasted like 2-3 weeks. And then I walked in a New York Presbyterian Hospital down in Manhattan in 2018. And my family basically forced me to go. Went there, told them what happened. And the whole conversation of my life for those 10 months was like, should I stay or should I go? So I was kind of sick and tired of just repeating myself, and it takes a lot of energy to kind of see where I'm at. So I went to Presbyterian in Manhattan, and then they're like, oh, sign this paper. We'll get you to our Westchester Center. Okay, no problem. Stay there overnight. The next day I go to Westchester Center. Little did I know, John, that it was a full-blown psych ward. So now I'm with real sick people, schizophrenia, psychosis. And I was sick, but this was like a real eye-opener. And I couldn't leave because I told them about the suicidal ideation. So then I was there for 2 weeks, see the doctor for 10 minutes a day. You got 23 hours and 15 minutes to basically do nothing. You have these little groups that are really nothing. Let's say it was like the size of Varsity House when you're there, right? But split in the hallways and rooms. So medication time, meal time, going outside 30 minutes a day, an hour a day, twice a week only to play basketball. I felt like a little jail. So I got out and I kind of did the Joker laugh, because cops, especially, and first responders want everything right now. We think we can control everything, and every situation in life, not only on the job, but off the job, we can control. But that's not true. So I walked back in and I said, I'm back and nothing's changing. And I told them I was drinking. They're like, oh, why didn't you tell us that in the first place? I said, I don't know. I didn't think it was a big deal. So I told them, and they're like, here's this book. Read the first chapter, read the beginning of it. And I said, wow, this is a pretty big book. I said, what's it called? They're like, the big book. I'm like, no, I know it's a big book. They're like, no, this is a big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Read a doctor's opinion. So I read that, and they said, listen, we can get you downstairs to our inpatient rehab, but we need 2 weeks for space. So I stayed upstairs for another 2 weeks. Then I went downstairs for another 2 weeks. So I get out. I spent Christmas there, New Year's. There's a bunch of stories in there. That could be a whole nother podcast or a book. Some really, let's say, angel moments or higher power moments. But anyway, I got out of there, and then it was 2019. And I saw the psychological section in New York City, and ended up going on my journey to attempt to get better. So then my mom was really pushing this place, and I'm like, listen, I'm not going to another inpatient place. I was just there. Something in me finally surrendered and I went to High Watch Recovery Center in Kent, Connecticut, which was a great place. I was there for another 6 weeks, so 2019. And now, John, I went from 165 when I left that rehab to 215 pounds. So the medication, the water weight, eating, and just eating anything, mainly sugar and carbohydrates. And that's a good thing to know. A lot of people that end up getting sober, they tend to start eating more sugary foods because of why the dopamine hit, the feeling good, but also alcohol has what? Sugar. So you'll see a lot of people, if you know, or maybe the listeners, that will tend to be sober, but cake, ice cream, sweets, whatever that is. It's just a realization to know maybe they don't know why they're doing it right consciously, but subconsciously. And of course, you don't want to stay with that routine either. So I'm like, wow, I'm 215 pounds. I could never even get to 200 pounds naturally, as much as I tried. And I got sent to a different unit in the city. And I was like, great, this is going to be, everyone's going to know again, repeat the story. I'm a misfit. I'm in purgatory. And it ended up being one of the best things that ever happened to me. I was very open. It was a good spot. I was there for 3 years. But in the summer of 2019, I had a good idea. Started to feel a little better. And I was like, you know what? I'll only drink at Yankee games or the Jersey Shore where no one will know who I am. And that didn't last very long. So that girlfriend I was telling you about, finally, she heard I was attempting to get sober or I was sober. So we were talking a little bit, and then I invited her to a wedding on September 22nd, 2019. And I said, I'm not going to drink. Walked into the reception. There's a waterfall of Ciroc, and that was it, game over. And I drank. The next day, we went to a dog park with my dog, and she's like, why are you doing this to yourself? Really, in some substance, why are you punishing yourself? You still have your job, your friends, your family. I just came back into your life. I'm about to leave. Why are you doing this? I said, I'm done talking about it, man. I'm done. I'm done talking about this. I'm going to do it. I said, just watch. So then I went to a meeting that night, into one meeting, and it took over and really started getting involved in Alcoholics Anonymous, therapy, sponsor. And in 2019, as I'm going through all this, John, 10 officers in the NYPD lost their life to suicide. I said, holy shit. I said, no one knew really. It was almost 11. It was this close to being number 11. So then how many other cops was it close to being 12 or 13 or 14, 15? So I took my addiction thinking with the booze into just researching a lot of mental health and realizing I wasn't alone. 20% of everyday people suffer from trauma, anxiety, depression, and it increased to 30% for first responders. Average age of a cop is 57 to 65. 1 in 5 cops have a suicidal ideation in their lifetime while they're working or they retire. 50% of cops, when they retire within the first 5 years, have a major cardiovascular disease, or type 2 diabetes. So I said, man, I'm not alone. I said, what can we do? Because I feel like the job really wasn't doing much. And it was just going through the process and going to check in for 15 minutes and then you just leave. And that's it. And I said, you know what? And this is where the whole Mark Bell thing kind of came in, John. I said, lifting, eating as best I can, and speaking with like-minded individuals, my day, good or bad, has really helped me. So let's do it. I started the nonprofit Reps for Responders. I have no idea about business. I'm still learning every day, but really back then, no idea what I was getting myself into. Wrote out everything, did all the paperwork. It got approved through the state. So March of 2020, we opened up a gym. That was the original mission, free for first responders and military. That's where all the fundraising was going. It was 830 square space, 830 square foot space, but it had some really good equipment in there, man. It got a custom built Elite FTS rack. I had another rack in there, dumbbells up to 100, a lot of strongman stuff, powerlifting stuff, hex bars, sandbags, yokes, everything, bike. So the goal then was that was the mirage. Because if I open up just a space to speak, it would just be me, myself, and I speaking. But now if I can drive girls and guys in from not only Rockland, but around the area to say, hey, let's get a lift and meet. Now an NYPD cop maybe can meet at Westchester, or if someone does take the trip from Long Island and things like that. But what I want to do was every week have a meeting once a week, open to first responders, military, and just talk and have it be roll call, no bullshit, free, open, and whatever is said here, let it stay here. And then our job would be to try to find resources to help if it was involved in fitness or mental health or in the community, but have guys and girls connect that way so they realize that they're not alone. Well, March of 2020, COVID, the gym was open for 10 days for good, and then we had to close the doors. So in that moment right there, it was, do I go left and say it was worth a shot? And I was 4 months sober at that time, like a strong 4 months. Do I go left and say it was worth a shot? Or do I go right and say, this is really when first responders need it the most, but this is when Frank needs himself the most? Because when I started it, we raised a lot of money pretty quickly. And I saw people were really behind this mission, which made myself feel good, which also but made the whole first responders organization have like a baby purpose. So jumping back really quick, January 2020 was supposed to be my final interview with the department. I got a phone call 2 hours before my final interview. So this is basically going to say like if you're going to keep your job or not. And they told me that my doctor left, and I said, what does that mean? And your doctor left the department. Sorry, got a new career. I said, I'm a nice guy, but this isn't right. 2 hours before, like I've been dealing with this for 14 months and really starting my journey now to get better and understand that you don't have to hide or be ashamed of what you're going through. We're sorry, it's a mistake up on the higher up end. We'll give you a call in 2 weeks. Well, that 2 weeks turned into 8 months. Nobody ever reached out. So that was more of like a little fire under my behind to really push the first responders mission. And really the free open gym I got was from Mark Bell. You know, when I went into his podcast, he has a place where you just come in and lift for free, you know, and I remember speaking about first responders like to the public for the first time, flew to Sacramento with my father. And that's where we spoke. And I really spoke about my journey, and we were there for 2 hours and opened up, and it was a great thing. So thank you to Mark and the whole team for that. Speaking about my father, he went to the same rehab I did. And now he'll be 4 years sober in a few days. So he went, he was a volunteer firefighter for 40 years. My uncle, FDNY, he had to retire because of 9/11. Both my great-grandparents were NYPD. So I guess you could say it's genetic or an imagination of, you know, this is what I had to do. And I did follow that path. And now knowing what I went through, being a cop is not the only thing, right? Like it would, if they got rid of me tomorrow, it would suck. I'd be upset. But facing what I faced, facing the Minotaur in my labyrinth, and going through what I went through, starting to know myself better, would say that I could do another job and I'll be perfectly okay. And a lot of cops and first responders, I say cops just because I am one and deal with a lot of them, have that mindset, especially in the beginning. And even in the military career, even at the end of the career, John, they don't even, no one, not many have a plan to what am I going to do after I retire? And all that trauma and the free time and the drinking and the hanging around. I deserve this, right, John? I deserve this. I just worked hard for 20 years. And then that's how you become a statistic. So that's what we're trying to fight. So after the gym closed, we went online like everybody else. And our program started to pick up a little bit. And shout out to my team. We're not a lot of us. There's like 4 or 5 of us. We work very hard. And now what we do in a nutshell is I run a meeting every Sunday night called Responder Talk. It's on Zoom from 7 to 8. And it's the same thing going back to what I wanted to do with the meeting in person. We've had check-ins from 24 different states across the country. And that's open all active and retired first responders and military. So the first responder umbrella is military, police, fire, EMS, EMT, corrections, nurses, and police dispatchers. During COVID, we had to amend our umbrella and we added in nurses and police dispatchers on purpose because you really see what they were going through during COVID and everything. So I'm very happy we're able to get them under our nonprofit umbrella mission for the services. So we have that could be a topic meeting. It could be an open meeting, right? Like I'd speak for 3 minutes, John. If you want to speak, you could speak for 3 minutes. Now we have NYPD guys check in with Texas, Florida, Delaware, all over the country, California, Colorado. Because if I don't, I might not feel comfortable talking to people in my precinct or on my police station, but I hear someone online, like a Jersey State trooper that kind of went through what I went through and exchanged numbers. And I don't have to worry about it getting out in the precinct. we have guest speakers. We've had guest speakers from Josh to Jeff Nichols, Navy SEALs, Ray Cash, Navy SEAL. We've had Guy Cicerino. We've had John Meadows. We've had a Harvard psychiatrist, one of very well known in the field. We've had top nutritionists. We had cops and firemen, everyday people share their story. So we try to bring all different fields in there. So that's our mental health part. We have an addiction and trauma specialist who sits in most of the calls, say 90% of the calls. I ended up getting my recovery coach certification, and that is how are we going to get you to stay sober from today, Wednesday to next Wednesday? That's all I care about. It's not therapy. What are your triggers, people, places, and things? What are your drinking times? How can we now add in 30-minute walk, a few 10-minute walk, any type of fitness? How can we add that in there? How can we get you to reach out more and break down there? So that's been a blessing, and that's been a great thing. The addiction and trauma specialist, we do a resiliency meditation skills class. It's in person in Rockland, and all of our services is for active first responders and military. Again, though, if someone reaches out that's retired, they can come and join the call. They can do, we have a good circle with the peer support and speak that way and get connected with other services as well. Now, the gym aspect, we have 3 gyms in Rockland that we work with: Varsity House, Hensel Gracie, Rockland, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And there is they de-affiliated their CrossFit name. They were CrossFit, but now it's Iron Fist Athletics, not CrossFit. But I like the way that coach does his programming, because it's not all CrossFitty. He'll add Metcons in there that are all bodybuilding based as well, which is great, and try to prevent injuries and things like that. So you might have a strength workout, and then you'll have maybe one day a Metcon that's all conditioning, but then you might have 2 Metcons broken into 12 minutes where you're just running through bodybuilding circuits. So we pay for the first 3 to 4 months for that. And there's criteria to hit for that, making it a certain amount of sessions. There's another gym up there that was at the Ed Cohen and Josh Bryan seminar up in Stony Point, and they are on board as well. So it's been a really good thing. We pay for the first 3-4 months, and then after that, it's up to the first responder if they want to continue on their own. But now maybe they have tools, they feel comfortable enough to work out at their precinct, or they don't want to pay that much money, or they can go to a retro or a sports club type of place, and now they can at least train safely, and they're not timid to walk in there. Nutritionist and strength and conditioning coach, but more of like a wellness health coach, where Danny Toshi, she will do a program for 12 weeks. And before you even talk about any type of food or anything, is, how's your sleep? How much nicotine, how much caffeine, attacking those things first. So she's been great. And that gym in Stony Point is all-American made performance. So I just wanted to make sure I got that right. So thank you to Steve. He was there with his team, a few of his coaches. So that was very nice of him being there. And that's it in a nutshell, man. That's our program. We've done gym events like we were talking about. One day we'll get one going, in your gym, but we've done gym events in New York, New Jersey, Rhode Island, Virginia. So it's been a great thing. We've done different workouts in honor of the officers that lost their life to suicide. We've done the deadlift and the bench press, for reps competition. And that's one way we fundraise money. We wrote a book that's on Amazon. We've been news articles, magazines, radio shows, all these things, just get the word out, is that you don't have to be a statistic, and you don't have to suffer as much as you think you do, but only if you let yourself, because it really comes down to, you have to put the work in. Just like in the gym, you want a 500-pound deadlift, that's great, but most people just can't get up to a bar and pull 500 pounds without ever lifting. So you got to put in the work slowly, step by step, brick by brick. And that's why lifting is just a huge, not only is it good for you, right, mentally and physically, but it gets you into a routine, it gets you into a structure, it builds confidence, it gets to see you transform. And I'm very happy what our program is right now, and keeps me and my team sober, and we're able to help other people. If I'm sober, then I can at least try to help one person, even if it's just one person during the year. So I know I just threw a shitload of information out at you, John, but thank you for letting me speak. And that's our program in a nutshell, man.
I love it. Well, I appreciate you sharing your story, because I know it's not always easy to kind of bring up those dark times, but I was actually just at an event in New York City, and I think that you'll appreciate this. I feel like this is like a reoccurring theme, and even for myself. But one of the keynote speakers said, where is it? We are best suited to help the person you once were. We are best suited to help the person you once were. So I thought that was something that I kind of, even myself, I'm not sure, I used to be 340 pounds. I was kind of shy. I was timid. I was weak. I was 275 pounds as a ninth grade wrestler, struggled with my weight my whole life. I was never really good at sports, but I found wrestling, then I eventually found powerlifting. So yeah, I think just kind of hearing your story and then kind of knowing that like you're not alone. In some of those thoughts, some of the, the anxiety, depression. And I think also just being aware of those statistics, I think is really important. And I think what's really, at least for me, and, you could speak on this, but I like how what you're doing, you have like the Zoom meetings. So you're kind of attacking and you're kind of managing kind of the mental side of things, what's going on in between your ears, and then also working on your physical body, your physical self, and then kind of working on those things, together. I think sometimes we, as meatheads, we just tend to just want to kind of get all our emotions out just in the gym, but then we don't work on like the other stuff. We don't kind of talk about. So I think it's important if you are struggling with, depression or anxiety, or you're not sure, that you're also like kind of, doing the work outside of the gym too. Cause sometimes we can get really fixated on, I know you were like working towards that, I think the 600 or 585 deadlift. And I've had like these, you get really like, tunnel vision on this. And at the end of the day, it's great to hit a PR, but like, if the rest of your life is like in shambles, does it really matter if you hit that like deadlift or you hit that? So I do think it's important to have, the simultaneous work of like, so Mark Bell, we talked about, you work out, but you also, work in. So I don't know if you want to, comment on that, but I think that's really important to kind of work on, just both sides, of the coin.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, congrats to you and your journey as well. I mentioned to you, I was like, yeah, I remember you were at Cortland before, and seeing that transformation is fantastic, and I just want to, thank you for sharing your story as well. And, I posting about it and things like that. And shit's not easy, man. And I say everyone's story is equally as important. It's just, are you willing to share a piece of your movie? Are you willing to share a piece of your chapter with everybody else? Because I can't say, John, that I was 275 pounds as a freshman in high school, but sure as shit, there's a lot of people out there, right? We know what's the number one cause of death in the United States: heart attack, obesity, right? And you'd have to be, I don't want to, you would have to be, I don't want to use this word, but you'd have to be very irrational to say, oh man, I'm 200 pounds overweight, but that person's not going to suffer from any type of depression or anxiety. Give me a break. And that's a whole nother thing, and not political, but love your body. Yeah, it's great, but our bodies are created to work at a certain rhythm, which you can agree. And studies and science shows the heavier we are, the more our body has to work, and over time could lead to early death. So everyone's story is just equally as important. And I changed my whole training style now, man. I don't powerlift anymore after COVID. Right before COVID, I haven't done my last powerlifting meet in 2017. When I started to get back into it, I picked up strongman, did like 2 shows for the first time, then COVID happened, and then go back. But what I'm doing is, and we talked about this at the seminar, everything that we do has a purpose, right? Every movement we do has a purpose for our goal. And functional training, just being able to move, being able to run a mile, right? Because my training is going to be different than yours, because I could be on the street and you 3-4 minutes and you got to do what you got to do to survive. 5 minutes. Thank God in the NYPD, there's a lot of cops around. But, there's departments out there that backup's 10 minutes away, man, 15 minutes away. So that's how I train now. But the same way you train your physical body is that you have to train your mind. You have to. And I believe there's a difference between your brain and your mind, because we know where our brain is, right? But really, where is our mind? I think it's all inside. I think it's everywhere inside of us, and how much that our brain is connected to our body. And the control center here, right? You literally have a nerve that runs down from up here all the way down into your stomach. And that's why they call your stomach the second brain. I think the statistic is, what is it? That's the vagus nerve. 95% of serotonin is created in our stomach. So we also talk about the foods we eat can also help fight against anxiety and depression, or can help cause anxiety and depression. But when I started my journey, I did therapy, man, for like 2 years, and then continued with a sponsor. But I think one of the greatest superpowers you can have, and you see all the cops with like this bullshit. You would think I'm talking like I'm like not for cops, right? Like, but the Punisher skull and the sheepdog and all that, like that's all great. But like, can you handle your emotions out on the street? Like when the guy's in cuffs, the game is over. Like if he kicks you, are you now going to punch him in the face and throw him on the ground for what? So that's our job. Also, our mission is literally to increase the emotional and physical survivability skills of first responders, so they can make responsible choices while they're working at home, working on the job, and at home, and prevent suicide and live a life where when they retire, they can enjoy a whole new life, a whole new career, and just become a better person. And that I believe that everybody should go see a therapist, because you got to face your demons head on at one point in your life. If not, you could be a 50-year-old man, but emotionally you still might be 20 years old. I know people like that. I have family members like that.
I wanted to also just kind of highlight a couple of things, and also just kind of maybe let you know, and some of your listeners, because I'm sure there'll be some crossover when we share this episode. So one of the things that like I've always been kind of a little bit of I don't know, beat to my own drum, a little bit of a rogue. Like I tried, like, I think maybe that was, I learned under Louis Simmons and stuff. And I took some trips to Westside Barbell to learn from him. And, just doing things a little bit like maybe not necessarily like by the book. And one of the things that like I've seen in the powerlifting space, and you may or may not be aware of it since you've, kind of not really actively competing and stuff right now, but I'm sure you obviously with, Josh and Eddie, you're still like kind of in that world to an extent. And one thing that I don't really like in the powerlifting world, and I think it could, maybe play into some of like the mental stuff that we see, and people like not being able to work together. Powerlifting is getting a lot more accessible and more popular, especially with raw lifting. And what you'll see now is, at least, what I see, if I'm at a commercial gym, you might have a bunch of people squatting, but they all have their headphones on. They all have their own rack. They're not helping each other. So one of the things that we do at our gym is not everyone's doing the same weight necessarily or the same program, but everyone's kind of like working on the same like monolift or the same bench. They're spotting each other. They're cheering each other on. They're watching each other's form. And I think like, even though powerlifting is an individual sport, I think the value of learning to, train with training partners, train with the crew, work together as a team. And I think that could definitely apply to, the law enforcement world as well. Like, and I think to me, like, I always kind of joke, because, I'm not really much of a drinker. If I have like one drink a year, like that's a lot for me. Instead of going to like, the bar to get a drink, meet us at the squat bar and let's all like train together. And I think that's a really just, not just for the physical part, but learning to do something physical that's challenging with a crew, especially for men. Cause like, a lot of times, I'm going to get, beers and bar food and watch the game. That's a lot, like kind of the more like typical, kind of man hangout, but why not like kind of bench press with your buddies, or do like, go for a run, or do some kettle, whatever it is, do a strongman workout. So I think some of like the live workouts, especially because we don't always get a chance to train together, but if we could do that on a more semi-regular basis, I'm not sure if you've kind of found that in some of the events you've done, but I know like for me personally, just being a man, sometimes like we don't always get that like social time, that camaraderie. And I think that's something that could be missing, especially for like young men that are kind of, starting to get into the workforce and stuff. So I don't know if you've had experiences with that, or any, comments to that.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. The camaraderie is huge, and that's just like what we try to push all the time at reps, and the tribe, right? The tribal aspect and the fellowship. And yeah, 2017, my last meet, when I was powerlifting, and I don't know how it is now, and who was like Dan Green days, Richard Hawthorne, Brandon Lilly, right? And Brandon went through a lot of stuff, and he was on our podcast and things like that. But he said, once you let the numbers mean something more to you, you've already lost. And I love his quote too, is, you make a plan, you stick to it, and you hurt some feelings. And a lot of people don't have a plan, right? They don't want to stick to it. And especially the young lifters. And I would say I'm guilty if, I would fall off and say, well, this moved great today. Let me go up 20, 30 pounds. And then a few weeks down the road, when you're supposed to hit a certain number, not saying it could have been that lift or anything, but I think everything does fall into place for a reason. When I had the meets, John, everyone was supporting each other. It was great. I don't know how it is today, but you are right about that because it's all about what? How many likes? What can I post on my phone? How many reps can I get and show off? And that's where it's out to, man. And I don't know. I also believe that, taking PEDs and if it's peptides or whatever, it's like the cool thing to do now. And people are just taking it without really knowing any type of science. And are you drinking on it still? Or what are you doing? And I think that has a huge effect on people that you follow on social media. Can help you or hurt you. And like, why are you powerlifting? Because I don't know what your opinion on this is. And we can even get to ask you a question is everyone wants to get stronger, but when you're really in the powerlifting realm, it does a toll on your body and on your mind. So are you training to powerlifting to compete, or are you just powerlifting because it looks cool and everyone's doing it and everyone has the hood and the beats on and the fucking 3 belts that everyone's wearing belts now and all this stuff, and the sleeves and look cool. So yeah, I mean, for reps, we do a lot of partner workouts, man. We do partner workouts. So let's say, for example, 2022. If it was 2023, right? Which it is. We look at the numbers of suicide from officers that were total of 2022. And then we make a workout based on that rep scheme. So let's say it was 1-5-3. Maybe we would do 1 deadlift, 5 heavy kettlebell swings or some type of pressing movement. And then we would do 3, it could be 3 anything, or you can make it 30 reps of push-ups, air squats, 150-meter row, one partner, then the other partner does 150. And we base the actual sets on the year. So 11 and 11 would be 2022. So each partner does 11 sets total. But the significance of the partner workout is that you're doing it together, that you're grinding together, that you're in it together, and you don't have to be ever forced to do anything because in the first responder world, there's not just one car in the Bronx, man, right? There's not just one car in Suffolk County and say cover it all. So that's the significance of it. And it is so, so important because there's going to be multiple times in our life, and it's called the hero journey. It's Joseph Campbell, that we're going to have to slay the monster over and over again. And I firmly believe, man, like you said, your journey, and I'm sure I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I believe we live multiple lives on this planet, and we have to grow. We have to slay the Minotaur. We have to get out of the labyrinth and come back from your tribe and come back a new person. And that's the hero journey right there.
Yeah, I definitely want to highlight in a couple of things. I don't want to say this is like every lifter in powerlifting, but just I'm looking at online. I'm looking at like I host a lot of meets. We're going to be hosting 6 events in New York, 3 in Delaware next year. I mean, one of the things is that we want to provide a platform and an outlet for people, and I think like whether you compete or not, or you train with a crew or not. I think it's important that like you are doing this for like your own personal growth and not necessarily just to like you said, look cool and things like that. And I kind of like think about this all the time, but like if I didn't have a business, like I probably wouldn't be on social media. Because there's a lot of times where I just don't even want to film. I just want to like have this workout be for me and not like,
It's the same
but
for reps, man. That's the only reason why I'm reps. It's helped so much, but it's one of the reasons why I'm reps. Without that, I'd have my personal account and just go on with my life.
yeah. So I think it's important to kind of like understand like what you're doing this for. And especially, if you're a family man or stuff like that, but, and to your point, I know you were kind of talking about like people they want to see these results so fast. I think definitely kind of, instilling some patience in people. So I think one thing I do like about having a contest versus just like training is that it does give you like a focal point where to actually like, okay, I can't like max out too soon because then I'm not going to really perform. So I think it kind of forces people to kind of have like have a plan. So I try to like, really make people focus on, have a little bit more blinders on, like what's realistic and kind of sustainable for them. Because we do train a lot of masters athletes and stuff like that. And, if someone that's like, in their 50s trying to keep up with, some phenom like junior lifter or whatever, it's probably like not going to like bode well for them. But yeah, I think it's important, like I said, to kind of focus on like your own personal journey and but before I kind of get, we don't dive into too much more of the physical stuff. I do think that it's important, like you said, to have some sort of routine, some sort of structured routine. I think that's kind of good for your brain. You're going to be you mentioned ongoing walk. It doesn't have to be like crazy intense to start, but doing something physical, you're going to release endorphins. You're going to start to eat right. You're going to feel better. And I think if you feel better, you have less joint pain, you're stronger, you're more confident. It's just going to you're going to have positive momentum behind you. But in terms of you talked about some like Alcohol Anonymous meetings and you have the Zoom meetings. Outside of like therapy, are there any like kind of tools that you do? Have you ever done like journaling, or is there any other kind of like techniques that you would recommend to somebody that maybe wants to do some, self-work that's maybe actionable that people are listening? Maybe they feel like they're kind of struggling, or maybe they feel like an episode coming on. What are some things that people can do to kind of get started with some of that kind of, self-growth?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then I kind of want to just take one thing back. I said, I don't even know about taking it back, but we talk about the powerlifting, right? Like, it is true though. When you get into the powerlifting world, like, that it's not going to be dandy and it's going to be on your body, but just don't be an ass about it. I'm going
Yes.
to be here is if it's helping you feel good about yourself and build confidence and get into a routine and you're battling drug addiction or and literally any type of addiction, right? And it's making you follow a routine. Humans need routine, especially first responders. That's great. Just know that it's going to be, there's only for so long your body can handle those heavy weights. I think that we can agree on that. And the ego can get in the way. So that's kind of how I want to word what we just talked about before is I don't care if you do powerlifting or CrossFit. And that's why we try to have all these different avenues, believe in multiple pathways to recovery is if you're doing running. I'm signed up in the NYPD running club, jiu-jitsu, CrossFit, powerlifting, because I just enjoy the camaraderie. I enjoy the different movements. I enjoy trying to try new things as well. And it's tough as heck. Pickleball, if that's going to keep you sober, if that's going to keep you humble, that's the word I'm looking for. And just don't be an ass in the gym. I think leaving a meet and a workout that we put together is, I think, a big win to take away is that if a guy or girl leaves and they made a connection, they made a friend, they learned something, and where they show up to the next event and now they are talking to people about the same journey, I think that's very important. No matter if you went 9 for 9 or 3 for 9 or 1 for 9, but if you met some really good people that support you, I think that should be one of also the takeaways of doing these competitions. Now, going to your question, yeah, that's one of the hardest part, right? It's like knowing your triggers, knowing when things are about to happen. And we're a big component of literally looking down at your feet. So feeling something happen, come on, look down at your feet. Okay. Now, what does that mean? That means I'm in the present moment. It's 1:57, 13:57 hours, November 22nd, 2023. I'm in my apartment. I'm talking to this great guy, John, on his podcast. This is where I'm in the present moment. But I also have to be kind and easy to myself because it's November 22nd, 2023. I've never lived this day before.
Yeah.
Have you? Unless we're Marty McFly and we got the flux capacitor, we go back and forth. But dude, I've never lived this day. Tomorrow, Thanksgiving, right? I've never lived Thanksgiving in 2023 before. So that's how you have to look at this sometimes in life. And I try, and it's not like I'm this guru that does it all the time. No, I still have a lot of trouble with it too. But that's one of the tools we use. I was lucky enough this year to do transcendental meditation. It's called TM. Highly recommend it. So the way that it works is you get a word, you get a mantra, and you sit there and you just say it over and over and over again. And you be straight up like this with your eyes closed, your feet on the ground, right, grounding yourself. And you want the noise in the back of your head too to keep talking, but you want to slowly drift away to this mantra. And TM is about 10 to 20 minutes. And if you lose the mantra, that's great, because that's how you know that you've transitioned into your meditation. And then they were talking about, I've never really thought of it like this before, which was fascinating was when we're awake right now, our body and our mind is on. Now, when we're asleep, our body is at rest, but our mind is always going, right? Our unconscious, that's we're dreaming. But when you're in this state of meditation and it doesn't last long, your body and your mind is at rest at the same time. And I never really thought of it like that. And when I do this type of meditation, like you feel really refreshed. They say that it can be just as powerful as a night's sleep energy wise. So that's a huge tool that we use on our tool belt. Journaling, of course, right? There's nothing like putting things to pen and paper and literally writing it down and saying, is this real or not? Like most of the time, right, John? We're like, we might get, and I'll explain the story about the labyrinth and how we have the Minotaur. I don't know if you saw that on some of our shirts or not. It's one of our logos, but I also have it tattooed on my arm here. Is I'm losing my train of thought here.
Talk about journaling, putting pen to paper, and then
Thank
finding
you.
the Minotaur and going through the labyrinth.
Thank you.
Yep.
The what's real and what's not, because we can get off this podcast, okay, and you can sit here for 10 minutes, and then you can spiral down the labyrinth, and all this crazy shit is happening. But dude, where are you right now? You're safe. You're in your apartment. None of that is actually happening out physically, but it's happening inside, right? So CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is you have a thought that turns into a feeling, to emotions, to a behavior, right? So it's really catching that thought first. And even if you can only catch a few of them and start to reverse it, that's a huge one. Think, is this really real? Or is this a perception of how I see myself or how somebody else sees me? I don't know. That's where this peer support, this is where this network, this is where the mental health senior therapist, this is where you pick up the phone and you call, man, and you say, listen, John, you can say right now, the crazy shit that's going through my head, can you help me walk through this? Can you help me switch this narrative in my story? If you were reading this book, would you say that this is fiction or nonfiction? And a lot of the time, it's not real, right? Our brain, a negative thought is 3 times more powerful than a positive thought. 80% of the thoughts we have are negative, man, in our head. There was a study out there, we have 60,000 thoughts a day. Now they're saying, no, it's not true. We have 12,000 thoughts a day. But it still came down to that most of the thoughts were negative than positive. So like, how do we empower ourselves? And it's going to sound crazy, but it's a lot of self-talk, man. It's a lot of looking in the mirror. It's a lot of battling your thoughts that come from with you. But a lot of those thoughts were also, you have to dig in the past, man, and realize that there's some things in our life, man, that we were just taught from family, and we have to say, was this real and not real? And that's a whole nother conversation of how key environment is growing up in college and high school, who you hang out with, your work friends, your spouse, your significant other, all of that, man, is very important.
I wanted to share this with you quick. It just made me another kind of thing that the speaker was talking about when I was at this clinic. He called them ants. They're automatic negative thoughts. I don't know if you've heard that term or not, but so you want to like kind of try to stomp on the ants before they run, because your brain, I guess the way he was kind of explaining it was that like whatever kind of program that you're like normally like running. So if you're normally thinking more negative or whatever, we all kind of know that person. It's always like kind of focused on that, right? So, but yeah, it's important to kind of catch yourself, because if you're kind of used to running that program over and over again, that's going to be like your default. And you see this online too. Like you could have all these success stories and testimonials, but you'll see like one negative comment, and that's like, we fixate on like, the one kind of bad thing, instead of focusing on, like the positive, which, it's easier said than done, but at least if we can kind of be aware of it, then we can at least kind of, step in like the right direction. I do want to be conscious of your time, and, but I really, and we definitely get you on for a part 2 and kind of, stay in touch. I thought this was a really great, first conversation. People want to learn more about the organization as far as the Instagram, website, like where can people find more about the organization?
Yeah, no, absolutely, John. Thank you so much. I just want to mention one other thing about, I've never done it, but EMDR, I know a lot of first responders and military and veterans that have used it and had a lot of success. I can't speak on it because I've never done it, but I just wanted to put that out there to the listeners, is to find someone who's well trained in that, and may be able
What
to
does
help out.
that stand for?
So that's basically light movement. I'll get you the exact
Sure.
um the exact word for the acronym for it.
Yeah. While you're finding that, I think like, with training too, I think try a bunch of different tools and see which tools, work, best for you. I think it's good to, kind of experiment, like just with training, you have different routines, you do different, like, you might try strongman and CrossFit, and you might, like, I always coming back to powerlifting. Some people like more of a mixed training, but I think, the more tools you could have in your toolbox, I think the better. And I think especially when it comes to like meditation and things like that, sometimes it's like anything else, it's a skill. You got to practice, you got to put in the work. And I think you'll reap more benefit like the more you do it too.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. And just breathing, like after the gym or before the gym, just sit in your car, man, and focus on the 4 seconds in,
Yeah.
2 seconds. Make sure you're going through your nose and out your mouth, right? You could work on this. There's so many different types of breathing. 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out. 4 seconds in, 2 seconds out. I know there's a lot of people that are fan of the cold exposure, right? To shock the nervous system to feel better and get you out of your own head. But a lot of it is just movement. Go outside, move for 10 minutes, call a friend, put on a podcast, and just try to change that frame of mind, like that ants. But what the EMDR is, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy, is a mental health treatment technique. This method involves moving your eyes in a specific way while you process traumatic memories. EMDR's goal is to help you heal from trauma or other distressing life experiences. So you're literally with this therapist and they're doing this light, literally, and you're just moving your eyes all around. And I've heard really great things from it. So I just wanted to put that out there. So yeah, I appreciate you, John, a lot for having me on, and this is a great conversation. Again, sorry if I was ranting too much, but
I appreciate, I mean, you're passionate about it. Obviously you have like a story to tell, and I'm hoping that we'll get you more followers and listeners. And if nothing else, I think, not to like single out any, I think especially for men in particular, it's like, we're always like, we gotta be strong. We gotta like have our stuff together, and we gotta like, we can't cry, we can't show emotion. And I think, we tend to bottle things up, and that's when, real dark things can potentially happen. So I think that this is a really important conversation, really for anyone, but especially the young men out there. Because it's a tough world out there. We want to support each other, and I think this has been, great information. So I appreciate it.
oh, thank you, man. It is tough, man, and it can really kick your butt, right? Like Rocky Balboa says, all of his quotes and everything. But again, we don't, like we just talked about, you don't have to do it alone, man. And in the powerlifting world, especially, we'll just use that because a lot of people have learned from somebody, right? They have a coach. They help them get to where they're at. So think of it like that. Your gym partners, even though you're not alone, you're doing it together. So just thank you. We have a Movember, well, it'll be over by the time this podcast out, but a Movember fundraiser going on. We're trying to hit $1,000 like we did last year online. We're at 670. So hopefully we can hit that by the end of November. No more events for 2023, but 2024 we have a big beefsteak in New Jersey. That should go well, and it's going to be in April. And that's just at a firehouse in Bloomingdale, New Jersey. You pay, and it's just all beef that comes out on this little cracker. So it's a Jersey thing. I didn't know that it existed till last year. So it was a great hit last year. We had departments and people from all over come. Had about 80 people there. We're actually having an event in April as well. Jocko Willing's company, Echelon Front. We have two people, Cody Gandy, became pretty close with him. He's been great to our organization. Him and Nick Lavery are coming down, and they're going to be putting on a training, and that's going to be open to all just active cops and firemen. So it could be an in-service training. Then we have a Fit for Duty event. That was a huge hit last year by Mike Coonahan and Mike Trotter out of First Form. So we have some cool events looking forward to, big events. And then, of course, these little gym events that we plan on doing, and hopefully we're able to definitely link up and do it in Long Island, which should be great. But I just wanted to say something about what you just said about bottling up, just for a statistic, because it is November and Movember, right? Men's mental health awareness month, or they say it's June, or just speaking about how we feel. And it's eye-opening, man, this one. And so men are 4 times more likely to complete the act and lose their life to suicide than women. But women actually attempt suicide more than men. So where do we find like the difference here is 3 main reasons why men have that 4 times more likely to lose their life to suicide. The act is way more violent.
Mm.
Their thoughts are more irrational. And 3, they bottle things up more inside and don't talk about it even with their significant other. And 3 signs of people going through suicide, right? They said three major buckets of why people lose their life to suicide. And there's an acronym too called, give me 1 second. It's ask the question and literally ask. Science shows that if you ask, hey man, do you want to kill yourself? People are actually say, wow, they notice me. Now you have to give them that time to listen. So you ask, listen, encourage, and follow up. Ask, listen, encourage. Don't ask a question and be like, oh shit, man, that sucks. I'm sorry, I gotta go, right? Ask, listen, encourage, and follow up. And that right there will give that person hope and faith in the moment to at least hang on a little longer. And the 3 main reasons why people will lose their life to suicide is you got a disease, man, you got an illness, physical or chronic disease, Alzheimer's, and doctor can't fix you, right? There's no hope. Guilt and shame. You went through something and you just can't get over it, man. Everything I just talked about, right? I just drink myself to death, or maybe out in the street, you did something, you could have saved someone and you couldn't, or you ran over somebody, or things like that, right? Something in your life, guilt and shame, or you placed a bet, you lost all your money, anything like that. And 3, which is important, and I think everyone can relate to, is purpose, is losing a purpose in your life. And that we can see that, dude, in the powerlifting world, right? I was powerlifting for 20 years and now my body's giving out, or I just don't like it anymore. But now I don't know what my purpose is in the lifting and the gym world. And maybe I should just never lift again. Those 3 things right there. And I just wanted to leave those tips out there that maybe it's affected people, or that there's signs that we just named that people are, to ask the question, ask and listen and follow up.
Yeah, I want to highlight too on like the following up piece, because I mean, especially like I think this goes really like in the lifting world, especially where sometimes I'd say this is more with the advanced lifters, but it can be someone too who's I've been kind of like in a weird spot because I'm electing like not to compete in like full meets, at least for an interim, and I've been competing since 2006. I'm trying out the strict curl thing. We'll see how that goes, but it was like very
I saw that's pretty awesome. Yeah.
yeah, it's something that's easier on my body. I don't need to again, for me, I'm kind of, getting married next year and all this stuff. So like for me to like progress my squat and like, I'm going to need a crew of people and all this stuff. So like, I have to kind of weigh like, okay, what's more important, family or squatting 900 pounds and like all this stuff. So the curls I can kind of do on like I don't need like help to do it, all this stuff. So I'm still going to like, I'll still like deadlift and squat socially, whatever. But I have to kind of weigh my priorities and what's going to be really important. But anyways, I digress. Sometimes with these lifters, it could be hit or miss. Sometimes they, like you said, someone like Brandon Lilly, he kind of pivoted. He's doing some more outdoorsy things. He lost a lot.
Look at his little workouts now, right? Yeah.
He seems to be doing great. I mean, again, I haven't spoken to him in a while, but some, other guys, sometimes when people kind of are done, this happens with professional athletes a lot. It's like, they don't have like that next step and they kind of don't have that identity anymore. So I think it is important if maybe someone's dealing with an injury or something that's, an athlete, or they're like potentially retired from their sport, or they're kind of in a new chapter. I think especially as men, but everybody, check in on that person, follow up, see how they're doing. Cause I know like sometimes, especially with these elite athletes too, it's like, someone like Eddie Cohen's a great example. He's transitioned as an educator, but not everyone like does that. And so he's still like very much involved. And I think that really, I'm sure like he gets a lot out of it personally too, but some people, they stop lifting or they stop, they're a football player or whatever. I know like when I stopped wrestling, I found powerlifting, but at some point powerlifting is going to be done. So, just check in on your brothers and sisters and see how they're doing, if they're hurt, whatever. Because, I hate to see some of these lifters that like, once they're kind of retired, you don't even, sometimes you don't even hear from them again. And you don't know, like, if they're doing good, you don't even know if, I hate to say, you don't know if they're alive. You don't know if, they kind of fall off the grid. And that's always kind of sad to see. Because I think like someone's worth, it's like, yeah, it's cool. Like when they're competing, but then like, they're still like a person when they're not,
Yeah.
competing. So I don't know. These are just some things. Cause again, I've been involved in the sport for so long. So I've seen a lot of like these great lifters kind of come and go. And sometimes it's sad to see like, I mean, again, some of these guys, like someone like a Dan Green, whatever, he's not active anymore, but a lot of these young kids don't even know who Dan Green is. And he was like, I mean, so it's like, to me, like, that's just like an aside, but I just think it's important that we follow up on our brothers and sisters, our family members, and if someone's dealing with an injury or a hard time, because it's really easy when someone's like on top to be like, I'm your best friend and I'm your fan. But then when they're not doing so good, are you still around? So I think that's like important, so I think that's kind of, at least, kind of where I want to leave people, cause I think that, it's easy to be like, a team player when everything's going great, but are you still just as enthusiastic when things are not so great? And can you still be there and be there for that person and support them when they are going through a tough time? So I think that's really important, that you follow up and check in on people, especially during those like times of need.
No, excellent message, John. Excellent point. And what you just said about Eddie, for everybody, and even what you're doing now, is the 12 step of AA is just carry the message. Carry the message in any way you can, because ultimately it's going to help that person, but it's going to help you. It's going to help your spirituality. It's going to help your soul. So I appreciate you, John, man, for having me on. Great conversation, and hope to be speaking to you soon.
And then just before we cut out, I know like, so it's Reps for Responders. Is there a website? Where's the best people that best place
Yeah.
people can find you?
So we're very active on Facebook and social media. So Instagram. Instagram is at reps_for_responders. Same thing with Facebook. Best way to contact is DM or repsforresponders@gmail.com, and our website, repsforresponders.org. So everything is reps for responders.
Sure. And
And
then anyone, just if you can just kind of run through the lists on like, I guess, who qualifies for the Zoom meeting and stuff. I know police,
sure.
or military. I know you also said maybe nurses, and uh, what other personnel like is
Yeah.
involved in the community.
So the meeting is probably the biggest part of our program. We also have an app through Circle, by the way, too, where any first responder or an active or retired, and people just check in and they put their workouts in and how they're feeling, and it's been pretty good. So the Zoom meetings is for anyone active or retired: police, fire, EMS, EMT, corrections, nurses, police dispatchers, then military personnel, of course, active or veteran. And if you want to join the meeting, it's with open arms. You just have to reach out if you're a first time newcomer. You just have to send a picture of your ID. You can cross out your last name. 99, we've had maybe one or two people say they don't feel comfortable enough doing that, but everyone sends it, and then that's how I verify and send you the Zoom link.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time. I know, we went a little over an hour, but I think it was a really good conversation, and we'll definitely stay in touch. So, definitely, again, if anyone's kind of in the Long Island area, we have a gym in Farmingdale. Anyone that's in the Milton, Delaware area, we're going to be kind of in touch. We'll have, whether it be like waiving some fees for educational opportunities, or maybe I kind of talked with the NYPD powerlifting about maybe gifting some people that maybe are less fortunate, to gift them some entries for our meets. So anything that we could do to help, just, obviously please reach out, and definitely give Reps for Responders a follow. So thank you guys for listening. Again, if you guys know someone that kind of, is in that military, fire, police, personnel, definitely this is an important episode to share. So please share it with them, and give the podcast a 5-star review. It helps other people find us. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, stay strong, and then we'll see you soon.